Hi friends, this is Grandmaster Jan Markos for the server ChessFriends.com. In this video I would like to show you one recent game from the top level. It's a game Mamedyarov Morozevich from the Vladimir Petrov Memorial, which was held in Latvia in February 2012. The game was played in rapid tempo, which means 30 minutes per player per the entire game. But the game is nevertheless very interesting, so I decided to show it to you anyway. We will focus on two topics. First of them is the connection between a better pawn structure on one side and two bishops on the other side, the advantage of a bishop pair. Because usually a compromised pawn structure, like a double pawn, is created in such a way that bishop takes the knight. So then one side has two bishops and the opposite side has better pawn structure. And we will try to find out how to behave in such a strategic situation. And the second topic of this video will be the difference between subjective and objective advantage. I would like to show you that although some positions are objectively maybe equal, subjectively it's not so, because we are humans playing chess and not comps or some robots, and therefore there are also some other advantages coming to play. For example, the advantage of having a very clear plan. Okay, so English opening was played. White played c4, black knight f6, white knight c3, and black e5. So this is basically a reversed Sicilian, although the tempo which has white as a bonus is quite a significant one. So white played g3, and now if black aims for open Sicilian, he can play something like d5, c takes, knight takes, and we have a reversed open Sicilian, let's say. But black played bishop b4, so he aims for a closed position. This makes some sense because in a closed position the tempo has a smaller value, and therefore black has can hope more for equalization, I would say. On the other hand, the move 3 d7 d5 is played very often, and it's definitely not bad. So white played bishop g2 and black castled. Now played a funny move. White played a funny move e2 e4, and he aims for so-called Botvinnik scheme. He wants to play d2 d3. He wants to play something like knight g1 e2. Castling, and then f4, and with an attack on the king side. It's such a scheme that the skilled player can play many moves without really thinking, which is really good for a rapid game. You can earn some extra time by playing quickly. And after these moves are played, you have a nice attack on the king side, which is also good attack on the king in a rapid game. So there's a very sensible way of playing the opening by Mamedyarov. On the other hand, Morozevich is too strong for letting this scenario coming into reality, so he took on c3. And this unforced taking of a knight is pretty much often also in the Sicilian, and here it also makes a lot of sense, because once white takes on c3, the mobility of his pawn structure will be greatly reduced. For example, if white plays d takes c3, now black plays something like d7 d6. Now he will put the knight somewhere to c5, maybe bishop to c6, playing some a7 a5 to secure the knight, and then he can play f7 f5 to open the center. Whereas white, what can white do? If he plays f2 f4, the e4 pawn will be very weak. If he plays b2, b4, the c4 pawn will be very weak. The mobility of the structure is really quite small. So the only real plan white has is to play something like knight d3, knight d1, knight c2, knight d3, knight d5, and after taking the centralized knight, white takes with the c pawn, and his structure will be alright again. So this is and this is also a position where the bishop pair doesn't tell so much. So white decided to avoid this and took on c3 with the b pawn. And now we have this double pawn again. And white has problems to be active in the center, because if he plays d2, d4, the pawn on c4 will be very weak. So Nimzowitsch would say that d2, d3 instead is the correct move, covering both the pawns, but then black can play something like c6, d5 and get space in the center. And that's what black actually did. He played c7, c6 and threatens d7, d5. For example, after some knight e2, d5, c takes, e takes, knight takes. White got rid of the double pawn, but on the other hand, he still has 3 pawn islands instead of black's 2, and these 2 pawns are pretty vulnerable. Just imagine black playing knight c6, rook c8, rook fd8, and pressing along these files. Might be pretty unpleasant. So this is not a extremely good scenario for white. Moreover, after I do the castling, here white doesn't have pieces standing well enough to actually fight for the center, because how can he attack this knight? Once he played c3, c4, the pawns will be even weaker. So white has problems to get to the center somehow, to attack and to get his ground in the center. Therefore, after c6, Morozevich decided to, Mamadyarov decided to be active in the center, played d4 instead of the knight d2 or d3. And this leaves, of course, this pawn and price, because now with the bishop on g2, there is no protection of the pawn here. So the pawn on c4 will be extremely weak. On the other hand, white tries to press in the center, which is always good. So now the black has to change his plans. d7, d5 is no longer possible, so he plays the modest d6, and after knight d2, this also signalizes that white want to maybe sacrifice this c4 pawn, because otherwise he would go knight f3 and knight d2 to cover it at least with one light piece. But from e2 it's 4 moves to c4, so this knight will never achieve this, and black will be able to take on c4 perhaps. Now black plays c5, which makes perfect sense, even if it's a lost tempo, because black fixes the weak pawn, and also this structure works very well with the c8 bishop, because c8 bishop is a white squared bishop, and these 3 pawns are on the black squares, so everything is all right. White played castling and black played knight c6. Well, now white of course cannot wait, because after some normal moves, or let's say normal moves, black would come and grab the c4 pawn and have a pawn for free. So white has to attack, so he played queen d3, b6, preparing some bishop a6, knight a5, and taking on c4. So and now white started with the attack. He played f4. One of the effects of the exchange on c3 is that black lacks his dark squared bishop on the typical square on e7. So now white threatens to open the f-file and then to pin the knight with bishop g5. Therefore the black knight goes away, And now white has a problem, because to open the game advantageously, he would have to overcome these 2 points. And both these points are pretty well protected, also by the d7 knight, so it's very difficult to make any progress in the center. Opening the position, I mean. So therefore white decided to close the position instead and to launch a kingside attack. So white played f5. And now after some bishop a6, something like g4, knight a5, white has pretty much play on the king side, although he will be pawned down. And also this is a clear plan for white, just moving his pawns. So black decided to, again, Morozevich is smart again. First he was smart when he took on c3. Now, sorry, he's smart in this position. He decided to open the position himself, just to avoid this easy game for white. So he took twice on d4, knight takes d4. So basically, it seems that black did something what is not allowed against 2 bishops, opening the position. But here the situation is slightly different. With the pawn on d6 and white pawn on f5, black's got 2 extremely good spots for his knights. And also the d6 pawn works well with the c8 bishop. So all 3 light pieces of black will get nice posts, and that's it. That's very good. So black played knight c5, and it's very difficult for white to make use of his 2 bishops in such a position, because usually the way how one uses a bishop pair is that he forces the knights to some unfavorable square. But here it's not possible. The knights will remain on e5 or c5, so such 2 good knights will perhaps compensate the bishop pair. Queen e2, bishop a6. And now, as the c4 pawn falls immediately, white tries to get at least some compensation for it, and he sees it in the d6 pawn. So he plays knight b5, rook c8, and takes on d6. Black, of course, retakes. Now white retakes, and this is an interesting moment, because black could have played also knight takes c4, and now this knight dominates the c1 bishop. So black holds pretty much of the squares, and the exchange of this knight and this bishop would be unfavorable for white, because the other knight would come to e5, and that would be a very typical advantage of a good knight against the bad bishop. So this was also a possibility, trying to take as much squares from the knight, from the bishop as possible. But black took with the rook. Rook takes c4. And now whites can go out with the bishop, but of course on a3 the bishop is not so fantastic anyway. And black can play along the c-file, and also he overprotects the very important e5 spot. Okay, so white played rook a d1, and black played b5. And this is a very important position, maybe crucial one. A good example of what I mean by objective and subjective advantage. Objectively, this might be equal, this position. At least this is what Houdini, Ripka, and the other engines think. They write something like 0, 0, 0, and say, or would say if they had human voice, that the better pawn structure of black, which means a healthy pawn advantage on the queen side, compensates fully the 2 bishops of white in open position. But in a practical game, black is much better off than white, because black has a very clear plan. He will simply run with these 2 guys as far as possible and try to get a queen. But what can do white to avoid this? He doesn't have really good plan. He can simply stand and wait, or I mean, playing g4, g5, h2, h4, h5 might end only in weakening the king. So what's the white's plan in this position? So objectively, maybe if two computers were playing, this is an equal position, but subjectively, when even good players are playing and there is not so much time because it's a rapid game, black will score much more than 50% from such a position. This is also good for you to understand once you are choosing an opening. When you are preparing an opening line with a computer, don't simply say to yourself, okay, this is nice, it's equality, or it's a bit better. You always have to know if you know what to do, if you know the plan, because otherwise it's not so important that you have plus 0.2, because you will lose the advantage with your planless play very, very quickly. Okay, so b5. And now white, what can white do? White simply centralizes his pieces. Bishop b2, check, king h1, okay, king is not going to be centralized, but anyway. Knight f6, h3, that protects this g4 square. h6 protects against h4, g4, g5, and also the black king has a safe haven here. Now white centralizes, what can he do? This frees the c4 square for the knight. Bishop d4, queen a5, rook fd1, black plays a6. So black is in no hurry because he sees clearly that white has no plan. So he simply, he covers both his pawns. King h2, queen c7. And white waits, bishop a1, h5, hint of threat along this diagonal, so white plays king h1, queen c4. And now, would you exchange the queens or not? Basically, as a rule, it's good not to exchange queens in such a situation. It's good to keep the queens on board because you always have a chance that something will happen. There are still, well, of course, there are always kings on the board, and there can be a perpetual, there can be something. We have all three heavy pieces still on the board, so it's good to hope for some counterplay with queens. That's why white played queen e3, and black started his expansion on the queen side, and white played queen f4. So trying to get this nasty knight. Okay, this is a perfect blockade knight. Nimzovich would be a fan of such a piece. So black, of course, doesn't retreat it. He tries to keep it where it is. And white waits, king h2, queen e7, king h1. Not much to do. Black plays a5. And now, at last, white found some plan. White played bishop f1, which is a really good move because the bishop aims to b5, and I hope you can see the difference. These two guys have moved, and therefore there is a free space for white bishop. And when the bishop comes to b5, it attacks the e8 rook, which is protecting e5. So in a way, the bishop is contributing to the fight for the e5 square, which is really good. Now black played knight c4, and this is maybe the crucial point of the game, because after the move white played, which was rook d4, his position fell apart very quickly. Also because with the move bishop f1, the e4 pawn stopped being protected. So now the only move for white is a paradoxical bishop take f6. This looks terrible from the positional point of view, because once the knight gets back to e5, that will be the end from a strategical point of view, but the knight doesn't get there. When black takes, now white plays something like rook c2. Now the knight on c4 is and prise. So now if black returns to e5, white takes on c8 and plays rook d5. And now as the rook covers c1 and the queen covers c1 and the rook attacks both e5 and a5, black loses his ground. He has to play something like knight c6, and now white plays e5 and is better, because now the problem with e5 is gone, and white has a nice brutal center and also a better light piece. Therefore, after bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, rook c2, black can't go back to e5, but has to go to b6 instead. Bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, this rook b6 take, oh sorry, white has to take, knight takes c8, and now this knight is far away from e5, and this is enough for white to get good play, maybe equal game. Instead, after knight c4, white played rook d4, and now maybe he was expecting the black will return back to e5, but black played knight a3 instead, and now it's a problem for white to keep the e4 pawn, because there's knight c2, very bad move. So black played bishop g2 and black knight c2. And after rook d2, black simply takes on a1 and takes on e4, and now rook d2 is met with knight g3, winning an exchange. So black would be simply a pawn up after knight d4. Therefore, white tried e5 after knight c2, but still it's nothing. Now black is simply a pawn up, and there's not much white can do about it. And this pawn is quite far away, isn't it? Simply goes bishop b7, rook c5, bishop d4, rook c4, bishop takes f6, and white x6, and white lost on time. But even after some g takes f6, white has nothing to do against b3. For example, bishop e4, hoping for rook takes e4, rook takes c2. This is lost anyway, but maybe it's a better chance, because all rook endgames should be more or less drawn. But black can play even b3. And now if I take b takes c2, this pawn is incredibly strong, and this rook will never move again, so this is an easy win for black. Okay, so we have seen an interesting game where I have shown you the interconnectedness between bishop pair and better pawn structure on the other side. And both sides were thinking about, maybe I should close the position, maybe I should open it, and this was a very interesting, from a strategical point of view, very interesting part of the game, starting with the move 6c6 and ending with the move 13 e takes d4, for example. And then we have seen blockading knight on e5, and the hopelessness of white in something what computers say it's an equal position. Subjectively it's equal, but objectively it's equal, but subjectively it's not. And humans are no machines; they are subjective beings. So please take care of this part of chess as well. And I hope you liked the video, and I hope you will stay with us. Bye bye.